The situation could have simply looked like a maritime accident. A routine engine failure. A drifting vessel in Swedish waters. But for the authorities, it was a chance they could not ignore. On December 21, Swedish Customs, Coast Guard, and police moved swiftly. With special permission, they stepped aboard. The ship's crew was detained. They couldn't leave without permission. A bold assertion of sovereignty. What they found was startling. Not just a broken engine. Evidence of a covert logistics network. The ship, named Adler, belonged to Leasing LLC. A suspicious name. A company blacklisted by the United States and Europe. Western intelligence had long suspected it. Allegations linked it to moving ammunition from North Korea to Russia. Supplying the artillery front in Ukraine. Where was it headed? The answer was shrouded in darkness. The ship departed from St. Petersburg, yet its final target remained cloaked in secrecy. A pattern typical of the Shadow Fleet, operating in stealth and shadows. But what caught Swedish officials' attention were the cargo details. They detected shipments from third-party nations. Suspicion deepened. Was this vessel just a cargo ship? Or something far more dangerous? This was only the surface of a larger, more alarming story. Investigations revealed that the Shadow Fleet was no longer just rusty tankers transporting oil. These vessels had become mobile military bases. Confirmed by Swedish Navy Operations Chief Marko Petkovic. These ships now carried personnel dressed in military uniforms. Armed guards stood ready on deck. The ships weren't just carrying oil, they had become platforms of force. This transformation marked a new stage. These ships moved beyond commerce into hybrid warfare. They monitored underwater cables, watched NATO drills, and even served as floating bases for drone launches. They're not insured, not maintained, and operate outside international oversight. This fleet, often called zombie ships, was the danger lurking beneath the surface, hidden in the dark depths of the Baltic. The Adler was just a symptom of a deeper decay. A weak link in a vast, decaying chain, designed to bypass Western maritime laws, but at a cost. The alarm bells had sounded. The Shadow Fleet's operational model was failing. Sweden's decisive action was the first crack in this secret military network. But how long could it hold? The stakes had escalated. The battlefield was no longer just the surface. War was now fought in the hidden depths, beneath the waves, where silent submarines lurk. Imagine a fleet once seen as outdated rust buckets, now transformed into tools of covert warfare. It's no longer just oil tankers drifting aimlessly in the Baltic. These ships are now armed, cloaked in secrecy, and part of a dangerous hybrid operation. Who are these shadowy crews? Mercenaries masquerading as security staff? Or actual military personnel? The lines blur, revealing a new era of silent threat. These vessels hide more than cargo, they hide danger. Monitoring undersea cables, tracking NATO exercises, and acting as floating military bases, these ships are more than just transport. They are potential weapons, ready to strike unseen. And the world is blind to this ticking time bomb. These are the so-called zombie ships, uninsured, unmaintained, outside any international oversight. The recent incident with the Adler ship was no accident, it was the inevitable sign of systemic decay. Russia invested billions, almost 10, to bypass Western laws, creating this parallel maritime network. But in doing so, it left its entire logistics vulnerable. And then came Sweden's bold move, a strike that pulled a rotten tooth from the system. Yet, beneath this surface, an even darker game unfolds. Russian submarines lurk beneath the waves, detected almost weekly, activity unseen since the Cold War. Do these submarines aim to threaten NATO's supply lines? To sabotage underwater infrastructure? As Russia modernizes its Baltic fleet with stealthy Kilo-class submarines, the question remains, what's the true cost of this covert war? And how close are we to a sudden, undeniable conflict that could change everything? Recent reports reveal that Swedish naval forces now detect a Russian submarine nearly every week. This level of activity hasn't been seen since the Cold War. Russian submarines are becoming a familiar shadow in the Baltic waters, indicating a dangerous escalation. These submarines are the key to Russia's covert war, silent, deadly, and unstoppable. But why are they so obsessed with controlling these deep, hidden waters? The purpose of these secret submarines is chillingly clear. Their mission is to threaten NATO's vital supply routes. They target underwater cables and pipelines that link Europe to the rest of the world. Swedish officials warn that if conflict were to erupt in Ukraine and ceasefire negotiations collapse, Russia will shift its entire focus to the Baltic Sea. The submarine fleet will grow exponentially, becoming an invisible army with one goal: destabilize, disrupt, dominate. Yet, Sweden refuses to stand idle. It is transforming its defenses into an active, aggressive perimeter. Through large-scale NATO exercises like Playbook Merlin 25, Sweden is strengthening its underwater detection network. Cooperation with Germany, France, and the United States enhances its ability to hunt and destroy these silent threats. The core of this underwater chess game is Gotland Island. Once a quiet tourist spot, now it's an unsinkable military fortress in the heart of the Baltic. Located just 300 kilometers from Kaliningrad, Gotland controls the entire region's air and sea movement. Imagine the roar of anti-ship missiles and the firing of air defense batteries. This is what Swedish and Polish forces are deploying to protect the critical region. They are outfitting Gotland with cutting-edge sensors and weapons. As Swedish military leader Eva Skog Hasslum explains, deploying missile units here secures almost the entire Baltic. For Russia, this is the nightmare scenario materialized. Every Russian ship is now a target locked onto by radars and missile systems. The era when shadow ships like Adler could drift freely ends now. Israeli radars, sensors, and missile systems turn every vessel into a threat. NATO exercises over Gotland make it clear: this is our sea. Every movement of Russian vessels is scrutinized, tracked, and prepared for potential action. These ships, once thought to be silent through the ice and stealth, are rapidly becoming vulnerable against the proactive defenses of NATO's strongest Baltic fortress. But here's the twist. What if the real danger isn't just these submarines? What if this relentless push into the Baltic reveals an even darker game? As the underwater tension intensifies, a shadowy chess match unfolds beneath the waves, where every move could lead to full-scale conflict, and even the smallest disruptor could trigger a chain reaction. The silent war has begun, and the outcome could reshape the balance of power in the North forever. In the shadow of a frozen frontier, 7 nations, the US, Canada, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and Iceland, unite against Russia's Arctic ambitions. Finland ramps up defenses by 75%, while Sweden unleashes its biggest military surge since the Cold War, soaring 88%. This northern alliance now plants flags deep into icy realms, turning Russia's backyard into a battlefield of alliances. Imagine the roar of ice-cracking ships slicing through polar darkness. Could one bold move in the Baltic ignite a global standoff? As Sweden shattered Russia's illusions with the Adler seizure, the Arctic thaws under unrelenting pressure. These bold nations challenge Moscow's grip on the North Pole. They launch joint icebreaker vessels through the Ice Pact Initiative. The salty spray stings the air like a defiant blizzard. Russia's era of owning the Arctic as its exclusive domain shatters. Its once impenetrable fortress crumbles, mocked by NATO's encroaching freeze. Meanwhile, the U.S. Army fortifies the Pacific Gateway. They deploy Hawk missile batteries on Shemya Island in Alaska. The metallic hum of radar echoes through foggy winds, a tactile hum vibrating through rock-hewn bunkers. Finland and Sweden lock the Baltic Gateway tighter. Invisible chains of steel pull taut against unauthorized intrusions. Sweden's Adler operation appears minor in this vast encirclement. Yet, it signals NATO's zero-tolerance stance on the northern flank. Russia's shadow fleet, laden with oil, now confronts not just raging storms or engine failures, but NATO's unbreakable wall. Legal jaws snap shut. Military fists clench. Who will shield Russia from this avalanche? China lurks, eyes gleaming in the dim Arctic gleam. Beijing's North Sea interest transcends diplomacy. It's a raw survival strategy, bricks formed from calculated ice. Sweden and Finland's NATO entry transforms the Baltic into a forbidden lake. Europe's trade arteries pulse under NATO's shadow, threatening China's vital routes. President Xi Jinping sees Moscow's western gates bolted. Keys dangle from Washington and Brussels. Keeping Russia's shadow fleet and northern routes viable shifts, from Moscow's burden to Beijing's lifeline. Yet, China extends no emotional rescue. It spots a golden crisis, a doorway to Arctic dominion. Beijing anoints itself a near-Arctic state. The Ice Silk Road project claws for control over energy veins and trade paths. But does this alliance bind or betray? Russia's desperation bends it toward China's grasp, a heavy yoke of economic chains rattling with unspoken demands. Putin flees the West's wrath, only to stumble into the East's waiting embrace. This strategic abyss yawns wide. Will Russia succumb entirely to the rising giant? As submarines lurk and shadows lengthen, one question haunts: does Putin trade one master for a worse overseer? The Arctic howls with division, icy winds carrying whispers of domination. Will NATO's frosty news choke Russia's dreams? Or does a new power rise from the East's iron grip? The fact that a Russian admiral commands a ship running Chinese software raises disturbing questions. Who truly controls it? Could this be the silent end of Moscow's military independence? As NATO tightens its grip on the Baltic, Russia's only escape route, the Northern Sea route, becomes a crucial corridor for Chinese cargo ships. If Sweden and Poland seal off the Baltic, Russian oil and Chinese goods will be forced to navigate the treacherous Arctic waters. Enter the United States. Its heightened military presence in Alaska and the deployment of long-range sensors in the region turn the Baltic Strait into a strategic choke point. When Putin attempts to evade NATO's Baltic trap and head north, he confronts the U.S. Navy and a hostile, unpredictable landscape. China may be secretly pulling strings, aiming to expand its influence while keeping Russia as a shield. Beijing's quiet stance on Sweden's seizure of the Adler ship is revealing. The Chinese are treading carefully, supporting Russia without severing their economic ties with the West. But if the destruction of this shadow fleet cuts off China's access to cheap energy from Russia, their patience may break. The risk? A regional crisis spiraling into a global trade war, with the potential for the worst to happen. China's expanding presence in the Arctic is no longer just about commerce. It signals a dramatic shift in the world's power balance, moving northward. Russia's once mighty status as a superpower is crumbling. Instead, Putin is shrinking into a subordinate partner, squeezed between China's ambitions and NATO's formidable defenses. While his resources are exploited, every move to tighten the grip in the Baltic pushes Russia closer to Beijing's orbit. Sweden's bold actions, militarizing Gotland and asserting dominance, leave Moscow isolated. Their only leeway now depends on Beijing's mercy. As Russia's shadow fleet is exposed and weakened, its last lifeline looks increasingly fragile, caught between hostile powers. The game has changed forever. Now, every ripple in this icy theater could ignite a conflict that reshapes the global order. A shocking reality is unfolding before our eyes. Russia launched a war to halt NATO's advance. Yet, ironically, it is losing its own backyard, the Arctic and Baltic regions. Quietly, Moscow surrenders sovereignty, handing power over to its eastern ally. The game has shifted dramatically. No longer are soldiers and ships the only players. Now, it's about the very future of Russia's independence. The map of influence is rapidly shifting away from Moscow, constantly redrawn with each passing day. What do you think this means for global stability? Are we witnessing the end of Russian dominance in the north? Stay tuned, because these changes could redefine the world's future forever. In yesterday's tense standoff at sea, the shadow fleets like the Adler faced their reckoning. Gotland Island transformed the Baltic into a fortress, every Russian vessel now scanned by relentless radar beams. Joint exercises by Polish and Swedish forces over Gotland hammered home one truth: this territory belongs to us. Can you imagine missiles humming in the air, ready to shred illusions of invincibility at any moment? What if one tactical blunder unleashed a storm that humiliated the Kremlin's naval ghosts forever? 248 characters. Picture the chill Baltic wind whipping across jagged rocks, salt spray stinging exposed skin, as Swedish boots thudded onto the Adler's deck in the dead of December night. Did those vibrations carry the weight of 1,000 unheeded warnings? The slogan, "This is our sea," pierces the fog now, sharper than a blade. Sweden's grab of the Adler wasn't just a boarding, it proved Gotland's defenses, a chilling trial run. Under its watchful eye, Russia's elusive armada crumbles. One hiccup in their chain, like Adler's drift, sets off chaos, dooming entire loads to seizure. But Sweden surges beyond mere shields. Stockholm embraces a fierce doctrine that flips the board entirely. Its forces demand cruise missiles spanning 2,000 kilometers to pierce Russia's heartlands. That's monumental, echoing thunderously. From Stockholm to Moscow, the crow flies just 1,000 kilometers. These systems could obliterate factories deep within, rattle command hearts. Defense Minister Pal Johnson declares it bluntly, "Forge a shield so robust, Russia's far-reaching threats recoil." They've already secured Taurus missiles at 500 kilometers for Gripen jets. Yet 2,000-kilometer reach morphs Sweden from Guardian to Predator, eyeing Russia's core with fire. It strips away the Kremlin's Baltic edge, thrusting it into fear's grip. This bold gambit feeds a northern noose. Arctic 7 allies, the US, Canada, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Iceland, unite fiercely. Finland boosts spending by 75%, smelling fresh steel and gunpowder in the Arctic air. Sweden ramps up its mightiest buildup since Cold War days, surging 88%, imagine the metallic clang of forging destiny. Flashback to a bitter memory, huddled in a frozen outpost years ago, the scent of diesel fumes clinging to damp uniforms, roaring engines of shadowy tankers muffling distant gunfire, foreshadowing failure. Why challenge Russia's Arctic claim? These nations birth icebreakers together, cleaving ice with defiant cracks, reclaiming polar shreds. Arctic backyard days vanish. As submarines stalk depths, Finland arms fervently. Yet, a twist looms. If Ukraine's war winds down, could Russia's submarines flood the Baltic like unleashed beasts? Pause. Beneath the waves, Swedish sensors flicker to life, emulating killer whispers in the dark. What unseen horror shifts the balance now, turning predator to prey? Have you ever wondered what happens when a ghost ship drifts into the heart of a NATO-controlled sea, seemingly abandoned and vulnerable? What secrets does it hide beneath its rusted hull, and what dangers lie in wait if those secrets are revealed? Imagine a massive Russian cargo vessel, silent and unresponsive, suddenly casting a shadow over Sweden's peaceful coastline. Could this be just another maritime malfunction, or is something far darker lurking beneath the surface? It begins with the Adler, a colossal 126-meter-long ship blacklisted by Europe and the United States, slipping uncontrollably through the razor-thin waters known as the Orson Strait. Encrypted in the stillness of the night, its engine failure sparks an emergency. But beneath the calm, an ominous tension unfolds. The vessel, now adrift, drifts toward the southwestern coast of Sweden near the Kullaberg Peninsula. Is this a routine accident, or does it mark the opening move of a covert game that could reshape regional power? For local authorities, the suddenly immobilized ship offers a rare opportunity, perhaps a chance to uncover what lies within. Swedish Customs and Coast Guard units move swiftly under orders that leave no room for doubt. Special permission allows them to board an uncertain target, and what they find changes everything. Instead of a mere technical fault, they stumble upon concrete evidence of illicit activity, a network smuggling arms and supplies from distant shores. The ship isn't just carrying oil but something far more dangerous, weapons and military-grade cargo prohibited by international law. But why was this particular vessel targeted? What critical mission was it hiding? Intelligence reveals that Adler belongs to a shadow fleet operated by a company blacklisted by the West, accused of ferrying ammunition from North Korea directly to Russia. This isn't just shipping, it's a lifeline for illegal arsenals on the Eastern Front, destined for Ukraine's battlegrounds. The route from St. Petersburg is a maze of shadows, concealed as regular trade, yet hiding deadly secrets. Suddenly, the surface reveals only part of the truth. Deeper questions arise. How many other ships are involved in this secret network? Crucially, this incident is just the tip of an iceberg. Investigations from the Swedish Navy disclose a terrifying reality. These rusty vessels are no longer simple cargo ships. They have transformed into mobile military platforms, manned by armed personnel in camouflage, masquerading as civilian ships. These covert operatives aren't just sailors, they're embedded soldiers, mercenaries, or military personnel trained to respond with lethal force if threatened. Their mission? To monitor NATO's undersea cables, eavesdrop on alliance exercises, and act as floating bases ready to launch drones or sabotage critical infrastructure. This fleet isn't just dangerous, it's a ticking time bomb. These zombie ships, uninsured, neglected, and outside international oversight, are decaying on the fringes of legality. The Adler's engine failure, far from a coincidence, signals systematic neglect, a consequence of nearly $10 billion invested in a parallel maritime network designed to bypass Western sanctions. This clandestine operation intended to give Russia new leverage at sea, yet it left its logistics vulnerable, exposed to the very forces it sought to evade. The Swedish raid wasn't just a maritime intervention, it was a blow against an unseen war being fought beneath the waves. As the shadows lift from the Adriatic to the Baltic, a darker game emerges beneath the surface. The Russian fleet in the Baltic is rapidly modernizing, deploying stealth submarines designed to carry out silent strikes. These vessels, hidden in the depths, pose a constant threat to NATO operations. Swedish officials report nearly weekly submarine sightings, pinging echoes in their sonar reminiscent of Cold War fears. These are no ordinary subs, they're being upgraded by Russia's top shipyards, ready to strike at NATO supply lines and tap into undersea infrastructure vital for European energy and communications. Swedish strategy now hinges on tracking and neutralizing these threats. The island of Gotland, just 300 kilometers from Kaliningrad, transforms from a tranquil tourist destination into an invincible military fortress. Armed with missile systems and radar networks, it serves as a watchtower over the entire Baltic. When NATO drills take place on Gotland, they send a clear message: this sea is no longer a playground for shadow fleets. Every Russian vessel is now under watch, every movement potentially a trigger for conflict. And the stakes only escalate. Sweden's recent actions weren't just about defense, they're about shifting the entire balance of power. The nation has ordered long-range cruise missiles capable of striking targets well inside Russian borders. With a range that surpasses the distance from Stockholm to Moscow, they're transforming from defensive guardians into offensive forces capable of hitting strategic targets deep within Russia. According to defense leaders, this is a strategic move that deters and, if necessary, retaliates against any aggression. This new stance pushes Russia onto the back foot, forcing it into a corner where every movement in the Baltic becomes a potential flashpoint. As NATO allies bolster their defenses and phase in new weaponry, Russia faces a pivotal dilemma: continue its shadow war or confront a much more active military front. The Arctic, long presumed to be Russia's own domain, is now the focus of alliances like the Arctic Seven, consisting of the US, Canada, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and Iceland, banding together to challenge Russia's dominance in the frozen north. So, is the era of secret shadow fleets coming to an end, replaced by open confrontation? Or are unseen battles still raging beneath the icy surface, where silent submarines lurk and hidden plans unfold? Every sound, every ripple could signal the next move in this high-stakes chess game, one where a small misstep could ignite a conflict transforming the entire region forever. Imagine a fleet so secretive it slips through the oceans like a phantom, dodging sanctions and pumping billions into dark treasuries. What if I told you Vladimir Putin's ghost armada wasn't just hauling oil, but turning into armed battlegrounds right under our noses? This massive shadow fleet, cruising gray zones beyond legal reach, has hidden for years, evading global eyes while fueling wars in Ukraine. But on December 20th, Sweden broke the spell, seizing a key ship and exposing Russia's hidden navy. As icy winds held off Sweden's coast, the Adler, a 126-meter behemoth on EU and US blacklists, ground to a halt near the Kullaberg Peninsula, its metallic groan echoing like a trapped beast. Russian crew yelled in frustration, the ship's hull creaking against relentless waves that slapped its sides with cold fury. For Moscow, this technical glitch felt like a freezing slap. In this maritime drama, Sweden spotted a golden chance. What cloaks hid the Adler's true mission? Picture sweaty palms gripping tools as the ship's engines failed in the narrow Øresund Strait, cargo from shadowy sources piled high, reeking of stale oil and forbidden secrets. Authorities suspected weapons smuggling, and on December 21st, they struck. Coasting Guard boots thudded on deck, a firm declaration of power in waters once Russian turf. Captains and sailors were stranded, held hostage by prosecutors' fiat. No more free passes, the Baltic transformed into a snare, every slip costing ships their freedom. Digging deeper, why was this vessel a crown jewel in Putin's empire? Owned by Leasing LLC, blacklisted by the West. It ferried ammo from North Korea to Ukraine's fronts, arteries pulsing with war fuel. Departing St. Petersburg shrouded in mystery, its cargo teased untold horrors. Customs unearthed foreign contraband, their fingers probing crates that scratched under touch, uncovering Russia's logistical labyrinth. Yet this was no lone wolf. Swedes' probes revealed over 1,100 ships morphing from tankers to hybrid threats, bristling with uniform-clad soldiers posing as crew. Mercenaries or army regulars, armed and vigilant, these ships spied on cables, launched drones, shadowing NATO drills. Uninsured zombie ships, decaying hulls hissing with rust, amassed a $10 billion gamble, turning the Baltic into a Russian chink in the armor. Sweden yanked out this rotten core, proving every glitch sparks seizure nightmares. But beneath the surface, a darker war rages. As Swedish sonar pings echoed eerily, detecting subs weekly since Cold War peaks, Russia deploys Kilo-class subs from St. Petersburg yards. How will this underwater chess escalate? Targeting pipelines and cables, these silent hunters herald a post-Ukraine shift, subs multiplying to choke NATO lifelines. Finland and Sweden counter with 75% and 88% defense hikes, Arctic 7 allies crafting icebreakers to seize polar dominance. Gotland Island, Bogland's jugular, morphs into an unsinkable carrier armed with RBS-15 missiles, slicing Russian fleet's range. As Eva Skogenstam warned, missile deployments on Gotland shield the entire sea, a humiliating twist forcing Moscow to retreat. This is our seat drills with Poland hammer the point. Sweden's Adler grab a dry run, proving shadow fleets vaporize under TVS radar. Yet Stockholm won't stop at defense, aggression brews. Craving 2,000-kilometer cruise missiles, double Stockholm-Moscow's 1,000-kilometer span, they aim to pummel Russian factories and cores deep inland. With Taurus already bought for Gripens, this leap shifts Sweden from guardian to striker, eroding Russia's bully edge. Picture the Kremlin recoiling, threats rebounding as Dieter's ants. In this northern encirclement, Russia's Arctic mastery crumbles under joint ice-axe strategies. Humiliation stings, from untouchable phantom to besieged prey. What shocking reversal awaits next, as NATO's net tightens around these watery phantoms? The era when ships like Adler could slip through the gray zones unnoticed is over. Now, every Russian vessel becomes a target, monitored relentlessly by radars and guided missiles from Gotland. Joint exercises by Polish and Swedish forces send a clear message: the Baltic Sea is no longer a free corridor for shadow fleets. These nations are establishing dominance, challenging Russia's claim to Arctic control, and setting a new precedent of vigilant sovereignty. In the cold silence of the Baltic, the sharp crack of radar signals echoes in the minds of Russian commanders. A single ship seizure, like Adler's, is proof that the old covert operations are collapsing. The smallest logistics disruption, an engine failure or a suspicious cargo, can trigger a domino effect. The ship will be intercepted, its cargo seized, and its mission exposed. This isn't just a maritime check, it's a strategic shift. But Sweden isn't stopping at patrols and interceptions. Stockholm is pushing boundaries, rewriting the rules of engagement. The government has requested long-range cruise missiles capable of hitting targets inside Russia, up to 2,000 kilometers away. Imagine the implications: just 1,000 kilometers separate Stockholm from Moscow's heart. These missiles can target military factories, command centers, and critical infrastructure deep within Russian borders. Defense Minister Paul Johnson emphasizes the goal: creating a formidable deterrent against Russia's long-range reach. Already, Sweden has ordered Taurus missiles with a radius of 500 kilometers for its fighter jets. But expanding that reach to 2,000 kilometers transforms the northern defense landscape. No longer merely a shield, Sweden becomes an offensive threat, risking the strategic depth Russia once enjoyed. This shift strips Russia of its privilege as the dominant power in the Baltic and places it on the defensive. This move fits into a larger chess game unfolding across the north. NATO's Arctic 7, comprising the United States, Canada, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and Iceland, are creating an unbreakable ring around Moscow's ambitions. Finland hikes military spending by 75%, and Sweden pours unprecedented resources into its armed forces, an 88% surge since the Cold War era. These nations are carving out a new sphere of influence, challenging Russia's claims over the Arctic, and preparing for a future where control of icy waters and strategic corridors becomes crucial. This is the turning point. Russia's once unquestioned dominance in the northern waters is crumbling. The shadows of the past give way to a bright, fierce resolve among NATO allies. The question remains: how much longer can Russia's silent operations survive in this new era of relentless military vigilance and technological brinkmanship? Russia's struggle in the Baltic is forcing its leaders to consider a harsh reality: partnerships with China. This once hopeful quest for sovereignty is unraveling before their eyes. As Moscow's escape from Western sanctions grows desperate, it risks surrendering vital northern territories to Chinese companies and icebreakers, an alarming shift in global power dynamics. Imagine the icy waters of the Arctic, where satellite images reveal a disturbing pattern: Chinese and Russian navies patrolling together more often than ever before. These joint patrols, especially in the treacherous Bering Sea and Arctic corridors, are more than just routine exercises. They're mapping the ocean floor, probing NATO's underwater sensors, and collecting intelligence for future military strikes, areas once considered solely within Western control. The recent seizure of the Adler ship was only a glimpse of what's truly at stake. The real threat lies in the shifting balance of global influence, where nuclear powers are engaged in a high-stakes game on ice-covered chessboards. Melting ice not only opens new routes for trade but also for conflict. NATO's strategic coalition, the Arctic 7, has been formed specifically to counter this emerging alliance between China and Russia, aiming to secure the North from encroachment. Here's the shocking twist: while Russian vessels decay and rust away in neglect, China is equipping its allies with cutting-edge radar systems, satellite links, and unmanned drones, technologies bordering on lethal aid. This military support is transforming the once primitive Russian fleet into a modernized force. But there's a cost: dependency. The Russian armed forces, once proud and independent, are slowly becoming enslaved to Chinese technology, risking their sovereignty for a false sense of security. In this frozen chess match, confidence is melting away faster than the polar ice. Will Russia's fading strength allow China to dominate the North? Or can NATO finally draw the line in the shifting sea of ice and power? The stakes have never been higher, and the next moves could define the future of the Arctic itself. Russia's ongoing crisis in the Baltic Sea has pushed its leaders toward a startling realization: partnering with China might be their only option left. Once fiercely committed to independence, Moscow's desperation to bypass Western sanctions is now quietly surrendering vital northern territories. Chinese companies and icebreaker ships are creeping into these strategic regions, signaling a dangerous shift in global influence. Imagine the icy expanse of the Arctic, where satellite images paint a chilling picture. Chinese and Russian navies are increasingly patrolling together, their ships slicing through treacherous waters like silent predators. These combined patrols are more than routine drills: they're mapping the ocean floor, probing NATO's underwater sensors, gathering intelligence for future strikes, areas formerly thought to be within Western control. It's a game-changing move under the thick layer of polar ice, a high-stakes chess match played on a frozen battleground. The recent seizure of the Adler ship was just a fleeting glimpse of the stakes involved. Beneath the surface lies a shifting balance of power, nuclear nations engaged in a deadly dance amid melting ice and rising tensions. As the ice recedes, new trade routes emerge, but so does the potential for conflict. NATO's Arctic coalition, known as the Arctic Seven, was formed precisely to counter this alliance between Moscow and Beijing, aiming to defend the northern frontiers from encroachment. The shocking truth? While Russian vessels crumble and rust away in neglect, China is secretly equipping its allies with advanced radar, satellite links, and unmanned drones, powerful tools bordering on lethal hardware. This military aid is transforming primitive Russian fleets into modern, formidable forces. But there's a dark side, dependency. The once proud Russian armed forces are slowly losing their independence, increasingly reliant on Chinese technology, risking their sovereignty for a false sense of security. In this frozen chess game, confidence is melting faster than the Arctic ice. Will Russia's fading strength allow China to dominate the entire northern frontier? Or can NATO finally draw a decisive line in the shifting sea of ice and power? The future hangs in the balance, with the next move potentially rewriting the destiny of the Arctic itself.